Hello and welcome to this video. We are going to solve the exercise, Exploiting Server-Side Parameter Pollution in a REST URL. In the video description you will find a link to a write-up. The write-up contains more detailed descriptions. So if you have any questions, just have a look in the write-up. Since we do not have a user account to log in with, let's try resetting the password for the user administrator. To do this, click on the link Forgot Password. We enter the username administrator and submit the form. Since we do not have access to a mailbox, we cannot proceed any further at this time. Now open Burp Proxy and switch to the HTTP History tab. There, search for the request post/forgotpassword. Next to the request, you will see the JavaScript file /static/js/forgotpassword.js. We now send the request post/forgotpassword to the burp repeater. In the repeater, we now send a few requests in which we modify the value of the username parameter. We start with the value administrator hashtag, which looks like this when URL encoded, administrator %23. When we send this request, we receive the response HTTP/2404 not found. In the body of the response, we see the message invalid route. Please refer to the API definition. This could mean that the server has set the input in the path of a server-side request and that the fragment has truncated some data at the end. Note that the message also refers to an API definition. Now we replace %23 with the question mark, URL encoded %3f, and send the request again. We receive the same response as in the previous attempt. This means that the input can be placed in a URL path, as the question mark character marks the beginning of the query string and thus truncates the URL path. Now let's change the value to ./administrator and send the request again. We see that the original response was returned. This indicates that the request may have accessed the same URL path as the original request. This is another indication that the input may be located in the URL path. Now let's change the value of username from ./administrator to ./administrator. Note that this returns an error message about an invalid route. This indicates that the request may have accessed an invalid URL path. If we change the value of username from ./administrator to ./%23, we get the error message again that the route is invalid. We will now test further //sequences until we reach %23. You will see that a different error message has now appeared. This indicates that we have navigated outside the API root directory. At this level, we now insert a typical file name for API definitions. For example, openopi.json. In response, we receive a message containing the following API endpoint for searching for users. Note that this endpoint indicates that the URL path contains a parameter called field. We update our parameter usernames according to the structure of the identified API endpoint. We use any value for the parameter field. We receive a message stating that only the email field is permitted. So we adjust the field and send the request again. In the response, we see that this returns the original response. This may indicate that the server-side application recognizes the injected field parameter and that email is a valid field type. We now switch to Burp proxy and open the HTTP history. There we search for the request get/static/js/forgotpassword.js. In the JavaScript file, we see the endpoint for resetting the password, which expects the parameter password reset token. In Burp Repeater, we modify a request by changing the value of the parameter username to username equals administrator/field/password reset token %23. We receive a message stating that the API version used only supports the parameter email. In one of the previous steps, we already identified the endpoint API. We will now change the API version with the value username equals /v1/users/administrator/field/password reset token %23 of the parameter username. When we send this request, we receive the token. Now we set a new password for the administrator. To do this, we switch to the browser and open the form for resetting the password. There, enter our password reset token in the address bar. Here we now assign a password of our choice and log in as administrator. When we click on the admin panel link, we are taken to the page where we can delete the user Carlos. Now click on Delete to successfully complete the exercise.